Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, explorers. Congratulations on all the amazing groundbreaking discoveries that you've made up to this point. And a special congratulations on landing on firm ground right here at Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. In today's episode, we're taking a look at some new Spanish EV farm machinery that may be a game changer in the paddock and on the battlefield. We're going to feed the starving masses with premium salmon grown fresh in a Petri dish, and we'll see how easy it is to extract hydrogen fuel from the deep, deep blue sea. But before we get into that, we probably should get our expert in on the act. Perhaps we should welcome him to the microphone. Welcome the man with all the juicy details, Matthew Dickerson.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good day, wherever you might be, whatever time you might be listening. And this week I want to start with the juicy details of scams. Now, we sometimes have some scam stories. We touch on them if there's something relevant, bit of a public service announcement I'd like to see it as.
It's an awesome public service announcement, but there's something about it that always makes me just tense up a little bit. It's like, scams, they're still out there, they're still doing it.
That's right. And it's one of those things I hate to say they're clever, but they are. I hate to give them any credit, but gee, they're good at what they do. I just wish they'd turn it to good. But I had the opportunity during the week to do a presentation for a group that wanted some advice and some help on trying to avoid scams. And so I wanted to scare them a bit first before we got into it, because some people go, yeah, I won't fall for that. I'm too smart to fall for that. And it's not about being smart or dumb. These scammers spend every waking hour, and that's a lot, working out ways to get past your natural defences and also natural tendencies we have. We naturally trust people. We don't distrust, or we're not suspicious of people first up. We trust people. So we're more likely to trust than not trust something, someone, or things that we read.
And sometimes, because we're human, we just have a weak moment. We're busy, we've got distracted, there's a lot going on, and then you've got to go through either a transaction or you're doing something and you're clicking on stuff and then you, read this message, bang, I'll just click on this. Oh, hang on, I've clicked on a link.
What happened there?
This is,
right.
Oh no.
Yep.
And I've done it myself, and you just go, that feeling of, oh no.
What have I done? So in the research that I was doing to mainly scare these people in this presentation, I came across a couple that one of them I'd never heard about before, but I thought this is how easy it can happen. Google and Facebook, so two pretty big tech companies. You think big tech, well, big companies for a start would have some pretty good IT systems, but a big tech company, well, you've got the smartest tech people in the world working for you, so you think you'd have some pretty good tech in terms of helping beat the scammers. So they're both supplied by a company called Quanta. Now, just for the record, Quanta has done nothing wrong here. Quanta just happens to be the name of a company based out of Taiwan that supplies computer hardware to a lot of companies around the world, big companies like Google and Facebook. So a person in Latvia, Evaldis Rimasauskas, thought, you know what, I wonder if I can just scam Google and Facebook out of a bit of money. So he created a company that sounded almost the same as Quanta. He created a domain name, or got a registered domain name that was very similar to Quanta, got hold of a Quanta invoice, copied it, which is pretty easy to do these days, and he sent an invoice to Google and to Facebook for some hardware, not much, and they paid it. And he went, that was a bit easy. I might do that again. In a 2-year period, he invoiced Google and Facebook $122 million.
Wow.
That was paid. Now, it's a bit like the Lance Armstrong theory. Once you've got a bit of a win, get out. Lance kept going and 7 Tour de France's. Right. Someone's going to ring some alarm bell somewhere. 122 million, that's US dollars. Someone finally went, you know what? We don't seem to have as many computers as we should have. What's going on here? And they finally tracked it back to Latvia, and he's spending a bit of time in jail now. So that's great, but he should have stopped at 120 million, maybe 100 million. That might have been enough.
100 million wasn't enough for you, mate?
No, that's right. What were you going to spend that on? So that's how easy it can happen. I mean, that just sounds stupidly simple, doesn't it?
Just invoice a big company.
That's right. And you still see invoices.
We're not
like
trying to give
now.
people ideas here, but I think we might have.
No, but I still see that. Sometimes you'll see random invoices come through. Yeah. Please pay this promptly. And you think, I've never heard of that company. Why would I do that? But in this case, they were clever enough to make sure it was a company.
If you're in charge of signing the checks in any company, can we just suggest that maybe you do a double check?
That's right. So that's at the extreme end. I do remember hearing about the one with this is a man in the middle scam where a woman over in Perth, and I heard about it at the time, bought a Tesla, got the invoice from Tesla, paid the money to Tesla. Of course, it wasn't Tesla. The man in the middle scam had gotten hold of that invoice, changed the bank details. 75 grand went there. She said to Tesla, "Where's my car?" They said, "Where's the money?" "I paid your money." "No, you haven't." "Yes, I have." "No, you haven't." "Yes, I have." Don't know how many times you do that for before you finally go, something's gone wrong here. She didn't get a car and she was 75 grand out of pocket. So it's not like that. But even this is to give you a level of how low they get. The last example I'll give you, James. In 2024 in Tasmania, extreme drought. There was a particular dairy farmer who was desperate for some hay because not only are you trying to keep the cows on your farm, but you want them to produce milk because you're a dairy farmer. So you want the cows to be eating enough food, they'll keep producing milk.
Exactly.
Put out a desperate plea on social media. I'm after, 200 round bales of hay. I'm desperate for those that might get me through for the next couple of weeks. And someone responded to her and said, "Sure, I've got 200 bales of hay. Just pay me a deposit so I can make sure you're not trying to rip me off, and then I'll deliver the hay." She paid the deposit as quick as you like. As you said, that weak moment, that moment when you're desperate.
Yep.
And then nothing turned up. Contacted them again. "Where is it? Sorry, I've been delayed." Excuse after excuse. And, of course, the hay never turned up, but her deposit was gone. So put her in a worse state when she was at the lowest cycle in terms of a farmer. So
when you're most vulnerable.
And that's where I think that gives you an idea, doesn't it, of just the level you've got with some of these scammers, that they're happy to take advantage of that. So, so keep being on the lookout, keep being alert. The world needs more alerts, as I used to say. But the bottom line is that you just got to be vigilant. I won't go through all the steps. I actually thought when I was doing this research, I thought we could do an entire episode on avoiding scams, but it feels too depressing to do that.
You have to update that in another couple of weeks anyway.
That's right. So we'll keeping people up to date as and when it's needed, but for the moment, just be vigilant and just be aware that some of the people out there, they're not very nice, James.
Unfortunately not. Okay, folks, if we don't get this party started, we'll be fielding complaints till next Sunday, and nobody wants that. So, here we go. First story. The humdinger staple of big showy community events, the feature event, the fan favourite since the 3rd century Han dynasty. It's the fireworks display, folks, and ladies and gentlemen, it may actually be on its way out. Move over the boom crash opera of fireworks celebrations. Drone shows are now taking the world by storm, and the neighbourhood dogs are passing on their gratitude, Matt.
Now, I need to ask a personal question that I'll only share with you and I and our listeners.
Okay.
Do you like fireworks?
I love fireworks.
Do you?
And I love the smell of fireworks too. However, I think, we try to go bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. After a while, there's so much smoke in the air. That diminishes the firework display.
You can't see them through the smoke. If only the smoke was gone.
Yeah, so I think there's a ceiling to how big your fireworks display can be.
And you are right. They have to get bigger than last year because what do? You compare them to last year. Well, they're not as good as last year. Oh, they're better than last year because I think New Year's Eve in Sydney, and I'm sure it's bigger around the world, but in Sydney, I think it was over $6 million they spent on New Year's Eve fireworks for this year.
Imagine if you could have fireworks that you could reuse. Yeah. That sounds like drones. But hang on, you asked me the question about fireworks. How about you? Do you like fireworks?
No, I'm over them.
You're over them?
I'm over them.
Oh, well, you're not in charge of any organising any fireworks display in the future, are you?
I look at them
Unless
and I go...
you're going to buy a whole bunch of drones.
Well, maybe, but I look up in the sky and I go, look at that. There's some strontium being burnt in the air or a bit of barium or sodium.
Yeah.
So, wow.
I like it.
I've seen that before.
We do flame tests in the chemistry lab, and that's exciting for me.
Well, that's probably true. and that's good because that's how they produce them. Of course, you've got a fair bit of complication in fireworks. You've got the lift charge, the gunpowder, the smoke that you often see.
Yep.
And then you've typically got a time delay fuse. And then you've got the burst charge, which ignites the various things. So strontium gives you the red, barium would give you the green, sodium would probably be yellow, copper blue, calcium orange, maybe a bit of magnesium if you want something really white. Yeah. So it seems like we're just wasting all these various metals and substances. And, of course, you've got the stars, which have got the small pellets of all these. So there's a whole range of things that go into fireworks. It's quite complicated.
Cool. That's cool with a triple O.
Well, I'm actually loving the idea of drones, and this is where we're headed now. You've got drones being used for displays. Now, the biggest one so far was back in China in October 2023. 10,200 drones in a synchronized display of magic. Now, I didn't stand there at that one, but can you imagine the noise, the buzz of one drone is interesting. The buzz of 10,200 drones would have been fascinating. But they're quite fascinating how they do it. And there's getting to the stage now that you can just go and hire a drone company to do a display for you at weddings, parties, celebrations, whatever it might be. Just what the heck? On a Saturday afternoon, you want to do something that night, go and get a drone company to do a display.
That's amazing.
They're typically not putting 10,200 drones in the air, but often maybe 100, 150, maybe a couple of hundred, maybe 500, and it's not too expensive.
And they can work some real magic, as you say.
They can. So typically half a metre apart. Now, I'm interested in that because when you've got something that's only half a metre away from something else relying on the wind and the air around it, and then you've got something that's moving that air because it's staying in the air, suspended in the air, then that's going to have to affect the drone that's just below it. So
That's
for
right.
them to actually stay in that synchronised...
But they work it out, don't they?
They do.
Yeah,
It's
and there's got to be
fascinating.
some AI involved in there. But
It probably is, but they basically sit back and organise these. And again, you might pay $5,000, $10,000. Big display, you might pay, what the heck, $100,000. But it seems like it's cheaper to me than a fireworks display.
less smoke.
Less smoke, definitely. Got to be better for the environment, not wasting so many resources.
Doesn't have the smell of cordite. Could they maybe sell little packets of cordite that you could smell
Just
while
sniff-
you watch the drone show?
Just stick it up your nose, you reckon? I mean, I have seen one where they try and do a combo, and I'm not sure about this one,
Ooh.
where they send the drone off, do a bit of a display, and then they have a small amount of fireworks on the drone.
They don't try to shoot down the drones with fireworks.
Maybe
No,
they could do that
okay.
as well. But it is quite fascinating. So when you want to have some sort of celebration and you're thinking about fireworks, go and see if there's a company near you that does a drone display. More
Well,
and
it's
more
going to take
happening.
off, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Excuse the bad pun. But you've got ones now. I saw one. There was a Star Wars themed lightsaber battle. So you had drones in a lightsaber battle. There was a wedding I saw where it was a baseball player marrying, I don't know what she did, but essentially they had a baseball bat with a wedding ring coming off the end of the baseball bat. So you can be pretty creative, even more so than fireworks. Fireworks, they get pretty clever in what they do when they send it up and then bring out a shape. But drones, you can do a whole bunch of really cool
there's
stuff.
a lot more spectrum of stuff that you can do with them, surely.
So about 25 minutes is about how long the drones will fly for, and you'd want to have a bit of safety margin because you probably don't want to be standing under 150 drones dropping down at the end of the party. 10 metres per second they'll fly out, and as I mentioned, half a metre apart. Obviously, they're using GPS to keep them in their position very accurately. And I know just with the drone that I've played with, when I just send it up and I do a video, I look at that and I watch the video afterwards and I think, that looks so still. It's almost like I've got this 100-metre tripod that I sat the drone on. So they're very clever at just making micro adjustments of their propellers to keep them in exactly the right spot. So, but that's one drone, not hundreds of drones.
Well, I wonder, how 10,000 drones might affect the neighbourhood of dogs. Because I know that my dog, if he hears fireworks from where we are, 500 kilometres west of Sydney, if they're setting him off at the Royal Easter Show, then my dog's going to complain.
Well, this is actually all about being good for the environment and good for pets as well, obviously, James. So you're right, pets
So
get
I
a
hope
bit
the
scared.
drones are okay with the dogs.
Well, I'm sure they're going to be better because there's the loud explosion, I think, which sets the dogs off. So anyway, keep an eye out for it. Go and have a look at that for the next celebration you're putting on, and don't get me to do the fireworks.
Several years ago, when EV sales started to take off overseas, we speculated here at Tech Talk as to whether EV technology would ever make a significant entry into the energy-intensive realm of agriculture. Well, a Spanish startup has released a fully electric tractor now, and it's so good it's turning the heads of some pretty heavy military brass around the world, Matt.
And more importantly, we've got a new measurement for mass.
Right.
It's 3.5 tons. This particular tractor is called a Voltrac, a Spanish startup the company called Voltrac, but they're calling their first tractor a Voltrac, which obviously playing on the word
Sounds
Volt.
right.
Yep. And full electric, dual use, and essentially remote controlled. So no cabin on there, no steering wheel. You can't get on it and drive it around. But they're comparing the weight, 3.5 tons, to the equivalent of a young African elephant. So there's our new SI unit, young African elephants.
African elephant, as opposed to the older ones,
well-
which can be used to describe other things.
Well, maybe that's the Voltrac with implements is the
right.
old African elephant. And so
Sorry, so how many young African elephants is this one?
only one, but I don't know what young is because elephants live to a fair age. So is young 3 months old, 3 years old, 10 years old? I don't know. But that's what they're saying, a young African elephant. So I haven't heard that one as an SI unit before. So there's a new one to measure
But it's here,
mass.
right,
It's
okay.
here. So it's got a carrying capacity of about 4 tons, which is a little bit more than a young African elephant. and it's got two 200 kilowatt hour batteries, so 400 kilowatt hours. Now,
so it's an interchangeable battery.
they seem to be the idea is to pop them on and off. But the good part about that is that you'll see a tractor, some of the smaller tractors with the larger wheels at the back, smaller at the front, as opposed to the ones that have got all the wheels the same size. And you'll often see a counterweight on the front. And I've often thought, doesn't that make sense to have an electric tractor? Because you've got all that weight in batteries, whack that down the bottom of the tractor, there's your counterweight. You don't need to put extra weight on the front just for the sake of keeping the front wheels on the ground. So a 200 kilowatt hour battery would probably have around about 800 kilograms to a tonne in weight. So you put a couple of those on, there's half the weight of your tractor alone in battery. It's got a operation time of up to 20 hours. Now, it's interesting you rate this not in range because you don't really care if you can do 200 kilometres on your tractor. It's more how long can you work it.
Because you're probably not driving 200 kilometres in the tractor out to the back of your paddock.
That's right. You're not going 100 kilometres an hour. In fact,
you're
this only
measuring it in hours.
Yeah, top speed of 39 kilometres an hour, so you're going to go for a while on that. But I love the remote controlled concept. Now, they are talking about full autonomy down the track.
Remote control, right? Yeah, okay.
But it's remote controlled. So you sit there, presumably, if it was me, I'd probably want to be within sight, and maybe there's some rules about it being in sight, but you've got a first-person view remote control to be able to do your tractor work. So kids out there on PlayStations, absolutely the next tractor operators of tomorrow, and seeing the tractor would be important to me. But
a lot of tractors already work on autopilot using GPS and whatnot.
So you're sitting in them still.
But you're still sitting in them, just in case,
So this one is away from it, and there's a couple of things about that. So first of all, you can operate more than one at once if you want to be clever. Doing it from the bedroom, sure, stay in bed and do it. Again, I don't know that I'd recommend that, but you could do that. But what they've been able to do is also put some adaptations on. So they've been using them to look for landmines. They've actually put an implement on that goes out looking for landmines to try and detect them. Now, if something goes wrong with a landmine and I'm the one detecting it, then that's not good for me. If something goes wrong with a landmine and there's a tractor that's remote controlled, the implement that's looking for those landmines probably is not going to survive that well. My tractor's probably going to be okay, but me, sitting a kilometre away or however distance away, I'm going to be fine. So it's a pretty clever use of it, and that's what they're talking about, this dual-use smart tractor. Dual use is probably limiting it a bit. I think it's got a whole bunch of different uses because it's got things like cameras on board that can judge your crop health as it goes out and does its work. So if it's putting out some herbicide, for example, it might be looking at your crop health as it does it. It might adjust how much herbicide it's putting on depending on what's out there in the crop, or just giving you some feedback about your crop's looking fantastic, it's looking terrible, it needs more water, whatever it might be. So a whole range of uses. So I think multi-use smart tractor would be a more accurate description. Just a note there to Voltrac, to change the name there. But how long before we do get to the stage, whether it be remote controlled, autonomous, or just a normal tractor, getting to the stage where using batteries and running on those batteries just seems to make a lot of sense. It's all well and good for us to say on Tech Talk it makes sense, but it's great to see some companies out there actually doing it in the real world. Yeah. So for any farmers out there, have a look at Voltrac.
The fight to keep our population very healthy it's a billion-dollar business. And prevention is so much better than cure. So in the battle for good health, early warnings are essential for longevity. And Matt, you've got some good news about some new tech that's a breath-based, I'm going to say this is a bit of a tongue twister, breath-based breakthrough.
Good work. Now, the first thing I thought of when I saw this was, is it real? Because I thought of Elizabeth Holmes, Theranos, a couple of drops of blood, we can detect hundreds of different things.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, is this another one? Because it sounded too good to be true.
Yeah.
A breath test to detect a whole bunch of stuff. But then I thought, hold on, we get pulled over on the side of the road and we breathe or talk into a device and it tells the policeman straight away whether we've got a certain, not just whether we're drunk or not, a certain level. It will give you a level of blood alcohol just from our breath. I went, well, if that works and we've trusted that. And then I looked at that. The first drunkometer, as it was called, was released in 1941. So we've had the ability to detect something on our breath for a long time. Dr. Roller Hager came up with the drunkometer. I'm not sure what the use of the drunkometer in 1941 was. Maybe a bit of fun with friends. Let's see how drunk you are, James.
Competition.
But in 1976, Victoria brought in random breath testing. In 1982, New South Wales brought in random breath testing. So we've relied on that for over 40 years for something and no one questions it. If you pull over, breathe into this, okay, you look fine, keep going. Hold on, is this technology any good? We all trust that. So using our breath to detect things is not new, but using it to detect a whole range of extra things definitely is new. So this portable device is called ABLE, Airborne Biomarker Localization Engine. I know they're serious because they've got an acronym. You know someone's going well when they've got an acronym.
They've taken the time out to get an acronym together.
That's right. You know they're serious about it. There was a focus team that spent a couple of weeks doing that. It can detect various health markers. So, for example, it can detect viruses, bacteria, glucose, inflammatory markers. One of the things that I thought was great.
Diverse collection of things.
It is. Glucose levels. Now, we've talked about continuous glucose monitoring, CGMs, which are fantastic, but having diabetes and having to prick your finger on a regular basis, maybe daily, to check your blood sugar level is not a lot of fun, I'd imagine.
And you would only recommend that for someone who's at high risk. But this sounds like something, if you're checking for a list of things, if it becomes sort of priced at a reasonable price, people might be picking these things up and just checking to see what their blood glucose is.
Yeah.
To hit the mark before they actually come down with diabetes too.
That's right, monitor their health. So
Type 2 diabetes.
Picking up blood sugar levels, picking up viruses. I mean, how many of us love the idea during COVID of sticking something up our nose, scrape it around, make sure you stick it right up there.
Love it.
Like, this is going to be better than that. So being able to pick up various viruses, bacteria, as I said, glucose before, and it came about from a particular doctor who worked in a neonatal intensive care unit and to detect some of the problems that the babies had. They didn't have a lot of blood. There's not a huge volume of blood in a small baby, especially maybe a preemie baby. So taking a bit of blood out is not probably going to be great for their health, but checking for various problems there, you need some blood to do that. So they started looking at that. Can we detect this on a baby's breath? Hold on, we can do that. What else can we apply this for? And getting to that point where they've got a portable unit. That's the big thing here. This here is about a 10 by 20 by 20 unit. So it's not very 10 centimetre by 20 centimetre by 20 centimetre.
Yeah, that's quite portable, isn't it?
Yeah, about the size of a phone book folded in half. How's that for a
you
unit?
might not have one of these as a personal item you've got at home, but it might be something that they just have at doctor's surgeries. So they wheel it around and you just talk into this machine.
And maybe if you did have diabetes, you might buy one. You might outlay whatever the cost might be for one. But yeah, you're
risk
right.
of that's showing up in your family and whatnot.
Yeah. The big challenge apparently is trying to get to the stage when you're detecting airborne molecules in very low volumes. So when you've got, 1 in a trillion type of thing, that's been a real challenge.
Oh, right, yeah.
What this does to actually do that is it takes the air and then basically turns that into some liquid molecules. So basically it condenses that into a molecule. So that's the way they're using it. So they're still using the same sort of technology in a liquid form, but they're taking air to turn that into a liquid form.
Right.
So very clever. So not available over the shelf yet or off the shelf yet, but this is the sort of research that goes on to get to that point.
Keep your eyes peeled for it, folks. Feeding a greedy population that's hurtling towards an insatiable 9 billion is going to be a bigger and bigger problem than most people even want to think about. So, our need to become clever about sourcing fresh food is going to become more and more pressing, particularly in light of environmental stresses like overfishing, for example. So, Matt, lab-grown salmon meat is likely to become part of a broader solution.
Yeah, now we've talked about lab-grown meat before and some of the developments that's been going on for the last couple of years. This is the first one where the FDA in America, US Food and Drug Administration, has approved fish for public consumption. So it's gone okay-ish so far with meat, and there are restaurants out there serving lab-grown meat as we speak.
Still quite expensive from what I gather. I just wonder if they're able to generate this one for a little bit cheaper. But anyway, yeah.
Well, I think it's still expensive, but your point is absolutely valid that we've got a lot of people to feed. So you might still choose meat grown in traditional methods because it's cheaper or you like the taste of it or you like the idea, but there are some places in the world that just can't get that meat. So if you could grow it in a lab, forget about being cheaper or dearer, just being able to buy it in the first place.
And I think fishing is going to happen. We've got the fishing boats that head out into the open waters. We've also got fish farms. They will still exist, and I don't see anything like this taking over.
No.
But the wonderful thing about this is that you're only supplying it with the exact resources that you need to grow that amount of meat without any waste at all.
So you're exactly right. They harvest some live cells from Pacific salmon. And once they take those, they cultivate those in bioreactors. They put exactly, as you said, the various nutrients, just the nutrients you need, the right temperature, just the right temperature. So you're putting the perfect conditions in place to effectively grow these salmon.
Just the muscle without any bone, without any lungs for fish. Sorry, without any gills or heart or liver or anything else that goes into it. And also fish, in making that meat, they'll have waste, so they're excreting waste out of their body as well.
And they've got to move around. You need energy to move around. So
Bingo.
all of that is gone.
Yeah.
So you're just taking what you need and growing that. Now, what's interesting, a couple of things there I find interesting is the first is they can actually produce it to look identical because you're growing it in a lab. So they're using this typically in raw fish. So
it's got those flakes sort of layers that are in the salmon as well.
You can make it basically however you want it to be.
Yeah, right.
In general terms, but it's identical. So each time it's not as if you go, oh, that fish, I'll have that one over there. That looks better than that one there.
Oh, wow.
You can say, I'll have that one, which is identical to all those. And again, they're using it in sushi. So the idea is make it look really good. I wonder if they do that
with tuna and particularly things like bluefin tuna and whatnot.
Yeah. Well,
how that might change the market in Japan even. You know?
Why not?
Look, I just think this opens up an enormous list of possibilities.
Now, what's interesting as well is that even though the FDA has approved this and said this is safe for public consumption, there are 8 states in the US who ban lab-grown meats. Now, they've said nothing about lab-grown fish, but obviously it's very new. So are they about to say they're out the door as well?
Yeah, I wonder what the reasoning is for banning it.
They may be the same states that
anyway.
don't like vaccinations, who knows? But yeah, quite fascinating. So,
and I look at also, we've mentioned this before, I wonder how vegans would feel about that. I mean, the fish that you have taken the stem cells from may still be swimming around, although after a while, that fish is probably going to die. But there's no reason to kill the fish. You take a couple of cells, and from those couple of cells, you can grow some more cells, which you can then use to seed other petri dishes. There's no reason why you would have to say that the fish has been harmed in any way, other than to take a couple of cells.
That's right. Just as if we might take some cells from a human.
Yes, yeah, and I wonder how that sits with the philosophical among us. Yeah.
So I think the 8 states that have banned lab-grown meats have done it more about protecting their farmers. I think there's some of the states that rely on farming for income.
And I still think we will need those farms. We will need fish farms. We will need the cattle farms and sheep farms and whatnot. We'll need those.
You talk to any of the companies that are doing this now, they're not saying we're trying to get rid of farming. They're saying we need to feed people. And this is another way to feed people. So supplement people who grow fish and who grow meat in traditional methods, supplement that, not replace that, because more and more people need to be fed, and more people need to be fed good quality foods like meat and like fish. So
absolutely
fascinating. I still haven't tried any.
No, I look forward to the day I can though. Smart rings are becoming a bigger and bigger thing these days. Matt, what does the Ultrahuman Ring Air bring to the table above all the others?
Well, it doesn't necessarily bring extra things, but it brings availability. It's reasonably priced. It's able to be used with both the Apple iOS and the Android operating system, so it's universal. And it's pretty impressive in what it does. Heart rate, skin temperature, blood oxygen from your finger.
That's interesting.
That's just fascinating. Your movement, your sleep quality, about 4 days battery life. Now, that alone is amazing.
Yeah, right.
When you've got a ring, you think about a ring, and it's a bit thicker than a normal ring, but you've got a ring that's got a battery built into it and enough capability to send information after it's detected that to your nearby phone. You think, that's pretty impressive. I'm pretty impressed with that. Now, again, it's designed to be low power because your phone's typically near you on your body, but I think we're just going to find more and more information. Some people I have noted and I have read about where they're worried about a bit of a data overload. People are trying to track so many things in there. I can't go for a run today because I've got to be busy tracking all my metrics about what my body's doing. So that is a concern that you're looking at so many different things, but surely it's got to make us healthier and more informed about our bodies. And I always say to people, when you go to the doctor, tell them what you know. don't base it on Dr. Google, but tell them what you know about your body, because you know your body better than the doctor. Now, the doctor use their expertise to analyse that, but tell them as much as you know. If you're wearing your ring and you go, it's really weird, doc, when I get up in the morning, I look at my heart rate, it's really high in the morning, but then it settles down. That might indicate something. So with all that extra information, surely, I don't know how doctors feel about it when someone walks in and says, here's a graph of my body over the last week.
Can you interpret all this for me right now and get it right? How long before Matthew Dickinson gets himself a smart ring?
Well, look,
It's got to match all the rest of your bling.
I've got to be careful. I do use iPhones. I'm not saying that iPhones are better than Android phones, and I'm happy to talk about both. But I probably would, like the Galaxy Ring, if I used a Galaxy phone, I'd have one.
Yeah.
Or Samsung phone. This here, the fact that it's universal, that's when I read this article, I went, you know what, maybe it's time to get a ring because I like the concept. It's pretty cool. So
there you go.
monitoring those things. So, yeah, thank you for the challenge. I've got to go.
Christmas 2025, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right.
Just start dropping hints around the Dickinson household.
My kids never know what to get me. So, yeah, these are quite good. And again, it might be something you tried out and it doesn't work quite perfectly. And then finally, someone comes out with one that's specifically designed for the Apple ecosystem, and that'll probably be more tempting for Apple users. But yeah, look, I think they're good fun, and I think they're quite fascinating in what they can deliver.
Here's a story that feels like it's come straight from the pages of a Dan Brown novel. Old 19th century books could actually be toxic for you, did you know? If you're a bit suspicious about your prized first edition H.G. Wells that's sitting on your shelf, then you've got every reason to be, apparently. When the Da Vinci Code meets the name of the rose, Matt, it may be time to enlist some 21st century protection.
I like the combo there.
Did you remember that movie? It had Christian Slater and Sean Connery in it. It had a bunch of monks who were poisoning each other with ink and stuff.
Yeah. So people find some strange ways to poison each other, don't they?
Yeah.
A whole range of different things. But they weren't meaning to poison people with this.
No.
When they wanted this vibrant emerald green colour, they worked out things that you could mix together. So they worked out you could mix mercury sometimes, chrome, arsenic maybe. So let's mix it. Oh, look at that. That's a pretty colour. Let's use that. So they use these things on wallpaper. Probably not great to be walking around breathing things that are coming off your wallpaper all the time. Toys, confectionery. Oh, I like that green lolly. I'll have one of those things. So quite fascinating. But they also used it in bookbinding. So those green, and I've seen them. I've been in museums where you've got these beautiful old green books.
Oh, look, we used to live, have holidays in an old fishing hut, and the bookshelf I can remember all these books and a lot of brown-covered books, but I'm sure there were some green-covered books there too.
So,
and,
that green pigment is typically a toxic green pigment. And if you're handling that on a regular basis, you're probably getting some low-level arsenic poisoning. You're not going to die from it, but you're going to have things like maybe liver and kidney damage. You might have some skin changes. Your colour of your skin might change a bit. You might even get some red and white blood cells being reduced.
Don't lick the covers of books, people.
Covers, that's right. So this is all a problem. And there was a poison book project launched a few years ago. Now, if I saw a poison book project, I'd either think they were thinking about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or
what's that about?
That's right, or someone was going to come up with a book of poisons to protect people. Yeah, but no, this was about detecting poisons on books. And what they found was, so there were some books in the National Library of France they found were definitely poisonous, so they withdrew those. But then they thought, we need to have a way of looking for these poison books without destroying them. These are fantastic old historical books. We don't want to destroy them, but how do we detect what's on them? So they came up with this process where they built a small portable device and essentially worked out the spectral signature for arsenic-laced green covers. And then using some visible green and infrared light to scan book covers, it basically gave them back the spectrometry, if you like, of what was actually a poisonous book.
We've been using spectrometry for quite a while now. In fact, I'm thinking Johannes Balmer was using it in the late 1800s. So we've known about spectrometry for a while, and we use it to actually interpret stars and information from stars in particular. But, I mean, stars are just sending light that is coming from particular elements. So each element has got its its spectral signature. And so we're now using it in a very novel sort of a way.
Yeah, that's right. And having
pardon the pun.
having that ability to look at the spectral signature, if you like, of a arsenic-laced book cover. So once you've got that signature, you can then devise a little scanner that will just look at book covers and say, that's fine. Oh, this one's not fine.
Yeah.
Let's do something with it. So that's now a project going on across the world, looking for some of these old, beautiful historic books. They're looking at collections at the moment as we speak at St Andrews, the National Library of Scotland. So they're looking at various books and saying, what are we going to do with these? Once you've got them, then presumably the thing to do would be to somehow seal the cover. So you can still look at that book, still have it as part of your collection, but not poison people while they're reading the books. Yeah, so quite fascinating bit of technology and use of technology, to say some common technology.
Very cool indeed. It's been a couple of years now, but just how dependent on AI have you become? It's a tool that seems to have solved a multitude of problems, but it seems that in seeking deeper knowledge and clearer truth, AI is just as susceptible to internet bias as your dreaded algorithms, as any other mode of internet use. Matt, we're only going to be fed what we want to hear, it seems. Is the internet just making us dumber and dumber?
Or making us more biased, perhaps.
Yeah.
We kind of have a basic understanding of the echo chamber, as we call it. We start looking for something and we get a story that feeds our belief. And so we look at that one, which gives us another story which feeds our belief.
Yeah.
And so then we believe that everyone believes the thing that we believe
Yeah.
in a very biased way. Now,
It doesn't encourage deeper thinking, critical thinking, does
critical thinking, it doesn't encourage critical thinking at all. But we've always thought, myself absolutely thought, that the way you ended up at the bottom of this echo chamber was by getting one bit of information, one story, one article, and then looking at that, which then fed you more along those same lines. But there's been some research done, 10,000 participants, 21 separate experiments, and the problem starts before we get that first bit of information.
Before.
The problem starts when we ask the question. The problem starts when we type the
How
first
we
search.
ask the question.
Absolutely right. So they conducted these experiments and they said, for example, if you said, is coffee healthy or is coffee bad for you, you got a whole range of different articles. So if you are firmly of the belief that coffee is really good for you, is coffee healthy for you or good for you, you'd get all these articles and then you'd keep reading those articles, which would then go down that echo chamber.
Yeah.
If you said, how bad is coffee for you, then you get articles about coffee being bad for you. And then you'd go down that little rabbit hole or that echo chamber. So asking a question in an unbiased way is the challenge.
Or at least maybe asking a question that might foster the opposing view.
Maybe.
So unbiased is different to sort of having the opposite bias, I guess.
Counter-argument, yeah.
Yeah, because I was just going to say that, with the algorithms that my social media is reading these days, it just feeds me all flat earth and conspiracy theory stuff, which is fine in a way because it makes me think critically about, well, why do I understand that to be wrong? And helps me to think more critically about what I understand. However, it also drags me down a rabbit hole and it's exhausting.
So the researchers have coined a term called the narrow search effect. So in other words, you're actually getting an initial search that's quite narrow, which then feeds what you believe anyway.
Yeah, right.
And they've tested it with Google, with ChatGPT, with some customized AI. So it didn't matter of those 10,000 participants what those different participants did, the different experiments, what they did. It didn't matter the search engine or the AI tool that was used. And it makes sense. You think about it. If you say, is coffee healthy for you, then you're going out looking for articles about coffee and healthy. They're your key words in that. So you're looking for those articles. So I think the real challenge for our listeners is to do that, to do exactly what you said, ask the opposite question. If you think coffee's healthy for you, I'll ask, is coffee bad for me? And then,
in what ways is coffee bad for me?
Yeah, that's right. Or what are the health effects of coffee? And trying to ask it in either the opposite or an unbiased way. If you're in a courtroom or maybe a TV courtroom, they might term it leading the witness, asking a question that might lead it. So, did you in fact see Billy Bloggs commit this murder? Or no, you're almost giving them the answer in the question. And I think that's the thing with some of these search engines. You're almost giving the answer that you want in asking the question. So quite fascinating and trying to get to that stage where you don't have natural confirmation bias. We all know that, we see that red car, we think everyone's driving a red car because we own a red car. That sort of confirmation bias is fairly well understood. But how do we stop ourselves from doing it? How do we stop ourselves
That's the
from
tricky
being
thing
biased?
because, when you're just looking for a quick answer, it takes some decent training to be so objective about something. And so for the quick answer, we just and think about so many searches that you've done in the last week or two that we ask questions to feed the beast.
Correct. Now, when they did this experiment, they ended up terming this thing, we talked about narrow search, but they had people in a cognitive echo chamber. And in doing that, they effectively found that trying to get people to change their opinions, to have a different viewpoint after doing a normal search didn't happen because you were fed the same information. Then they got someone else to frame the question for someone that they knew had a certain belief, and people actually were more open to different ideas once they were presented different views there. So trying to get someone that thinks the opposite to you, or just try and teach yourself away.
Well, and also just trying to keep an open mind about things, but not so open that that your brains fall out. Yeah. Anyway, just before we move on, I just want everyone to know that coffee is just good for you, particularly first thing in the morning. At least it's just good for me, I should say.
That's right. And you've confirmed that by doing research on it?
Just my feels. In the search for clean energy sources, a lot of focus is geared towards the very high energy density of hydrogen fuel. The difficult part is, though, in the excessive energy requirements of producing said hydrogen fuel. Matt, what is the latest party trick to extract hydrogen from the deep ocean? It's going to cheat physics.
By the year 2050, we're going to need 500 million tonnes of hydrogen across the world.
Now, considering it's extremely light, that's a lot of hydrogen
It's
fuel.
a lot of hydrogen, a lot of volume of hydrogen. But luckily, we've got a good source of hydrogen in water, in H2O. In the past, though, electrolysis has consumed about 9 litres of fresh water per kilogram of hydrogen produced. So that's a lot.
That's a lot of fresh water too.
Right. And a lot of energy that you need to actually do that.
Yeah.
So some researchers at the University of Sharjah have got a scalable method to extract hydrogen directly from seawater, which is much better because we've got a lot more of that than we have of fresh water.
Yeah.
And we want fresh water to drink. So let's do that.
And cook with, and we've got to wash with it. We need fresh water for so many things.
That's right. Stop taking hydrogen from it. Go and use seawater. Now, one of the things I think that's going to be absolutely essential, we've talked about it before, sure, light vehicles, driving our car from places around the city and a couple of 100 kilometres away, having a battery in it, fantastic. When you start using batteries for long-haul trucks, long-haul shipping, etc., I don't know that batteries are going to be the solution. Hydrogen, I think, will be the solution for that long-haul transport, but that means you've got to produce the hydrogen, and we want to produce it in a clean way, otherwise it kind of defeats the purpose of producing the hydrogen in a dirty way.
Exactly.
So this process basically doesn't require desalination, doesn't require chemical additives. They've basically got a process where you can put electricity through electrodes set up in a certain way where you can produce a constant stream of hydrogen at a efficiency rate of 98%. So in other words, the amount of energy that's being put into the system and what you'll produce in terms of the hydrogen capabilities is 98%. You're always going to lose something.
Yeah.
98% is not too
Not
bad.
too bad.
Obviously, all of this relies on making sure you've got your electricity coming in produced in a renewable way. It defeats the whole purpose if you're burning coal to produce hydrogen this way. The whole concept of this was to produce hydrogen in some arid, sun-rich coastal regions because you've got sun and you've got ocean. Let's go and produce hydrogen. So one of the things I think fascinating about the whole new world economy we've got is even though there might be places where they say, oh no, this is bad because we have oil or we have coal, what's going to happen to our area? There's going to be needs for other things. And here's a perfect example. You might have some coastal region that maybe hasn't been going that well from an economic point of view. Next thing you know, they've got hydrogen being produced from there. So it creates a whole other industry. When some industries shut down, other ones are going to start up. And this is a perfect example of that. So being able to produce hydrogen at scale from seawater with renewable energy is the holy grail of hydrogen and long-haul transport. So I think this is going to be a big thing going forward.
Bring it on.
Yeah, and great to see researchers doing some of the great work we're going to need for commercial applications.
looks like the tech boffins at Apple saw the Iron Man films 15 years ago, took a shine to the Tony Stark computer system that he had with all of Robert Downey Jr.'s hand wavings in front of a transparent screen and such. Well, the nerds at Apple headquarters took it up as a challenge, and now it looks like the average consumer will soon get to enter the Marvel universe for themselves, Matt.
We keep taking fiction and bringing it into the real world. So the Worldwide Developers Conference was on a week or so ago. That's Apple's annual event to announce various things. And I thought it wasn't going to be that exciting this year because one of the first announcements was the fact that Breakthrough folks, they're going to call the operating systems they've got across their range of products, so iPhone, watch, tablet, Mac OS, etc., all the same number. So rather than having watch OS 7 and iOS 17, they're going to call them all version 26. And I went, wow, is that it? You're going to rename the operating system to match the year coming forward, and that's the big announcement.
What time of morning was this that you're up while listening to this?
Yeah, it's usually 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So
I might head back to bed.
I thought, good idea, but is that a big announcement? But the big announcement was liquid glass. And this is really relying on the additional computing power that a phone has and the, I suppose, graphics capabilities of a modern phone. So rather than have something on screen that's opaque, so whatever you're looking at on screen, you're looking at that icon, that game, whatever it might be on screen, it's opaque. They're basically building in translucency. So you can see those various things on the screen, also see what's behind them. So you might be watching something on screen and catching up with something, but also just having your emails behind there just to see when a new email comes in so that you know something's there that you should take notice of.
Enormously distracting. How do you focus on it? This is
Well,
going to blow my brain.
I wondered that, and I looked at the demo and went, it looks pretty cool. It may be distracting, but I think it's just, someone said, we've got enough power to do this now. Why don't we go and do this? This is pretty cool.
And they can do it on the movies, so why can't we do it now?
That's right. So I think it'll be mainly used for buttons and sliders and navigation panels, all sorts of things. I absolutely think the lock screen will have a whole range of different things coming up on it now. It'll just be ways you can show it off. One of the things with the Worldwide Developers Conference is to show off things to various developers so you get them to get excited about it and start developing apps. Hopefully at the moment, as we speak, developers are out there going, now, how can I use that new liquid glass? And again, it's got a trendy name from Apple, so that'll be capturing the market. A bit like MagSafe, when people come in for a Samsung device where they want to have a QI2 charger that does certain things, they just say MagSafe because Apple's really good at taking a sexy name and making it the industry standard. So podcast, that was an Apple term, and here we are, we're doing a podcast now that you can listen to on a Samsung phone.
Yep.
But liquid glass, I think, is something they hope will take off, and I think it will, but really it's probably one of those things where you look at it now, you go, that's cool, and in a year or two's time, it'll just be par for the course standard things like we've got with various other features. The other one, they had a few new fitness concepts. Workout Buddy is one, a vocal fitness coach powered by AI. So I don't know how I feel about that. Someone that's AI telling me to work harder, to push it harder, to sweat harder, stop being such a bludger, stop being so fat and lazy.
After you, mate.
That's right. You show us what you can do. So anyway, Worldwide Developers Conference, check it out. It's usually the things that will come out in the latest iOS that will come out typically around September. So you get a bit of a sneak preview at what's coming next.
Very interesting. And that's that for another week, ladies and gentlemen. The tide is going out fast, and if we waste another minute, we'll be as good as beach for another 6 hours. We've got to get this boat out. So thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
I'm going to look up what shares I can buy in drone displays, not fireworks companies now, to see which drone companies are going to take over the world from fireworks.
Well, I've got a taste for sushi. I'm going to see what's been baking down at the local lab.
That's right.
Thanks for tuning into another freshly squeezed episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Remember, 9 out of 10 listeners agree that Tech Talk is great with breakfast, as an aperitif, before dinner, or even as a late night treat. I'm James Eddy, and it has been a pleasure to host this cosy little podcast each week. We hope that you enjoyed it enough to join us again next week, or even better, you enjoyed it so much that you'll bring some friends along next time. In the meantime, take care, and we'll see you again when we see you.